What's going on, guys? Got a little bit of a different one for you today. You know that most of my videos are about building something, doing something different. But Inja let me know that there were a couple people who are interested in having me look at a couple of their products. And so I'm starting off what will be very infrequent review videos with a cool little scooter today. I'm gonna give you basically a technical rundown of it. How does it compare to others in the category? And I'll throw a few of those up here on the screen right now that we can then put in the back of our minds. So as we go through the specs and the build quality and that kind of thing, we have comparisons of what is in the same price category roughly and the same style of scooter. And you guys know me, I'm not the kind of guy who will just do a surface level thing. I want to understand it. I want to give you the pros, the cons, the technical merits, the mechanical qualities. And so for this video, you can expect me to go through some of the details, some of the finer points, speed, range, all those types of parameters, but I want to get you it from a more technical perspective. And there's not a lot of information on this scooter out in the market right now. And by the time it's over, you should have a pretty good idea what you're looking at. Off the bat, well packaged, comes with all the tools that you need hypothetically. Let's keep rolling. Comes with a 2-amp charger, so that 10 amp hour battery will take roughly 5 hours to charge to entirely full. Not terrible, not spectacular. Tools right there. Comes with a manual, we'll reference as needed. It's a bigger type of scooter. I mean, it's a 10-inch wheel. I saw conflicting reviews. Some of them said that they were pneumatic, some of them said that they were solid. And you can see it's quite a large wheel. It is a solid core. It does not require air. It's got a pretty high quality disc brake setup on it relative to class of scooter. I think I would prefer a non-pneumatic tire overall, just because less to maintain. If it wears down, it's not going to end up getting to the point where it's susceptible to getting puncture in it, that kind of thing. So I think end of the day I do prefer that. The quality of ride will be impacted. I mean, you get better ride quality when there's air in the tire. It's kind of a firm rubber. It's not got the perforations in it that give it the simulated air feel. It is, I'm pushing on that quite hard, no give to it. It's almost kind of plasticized. It's a 44-pound, 20-kilogram unit. It looked like it was packaged well to me. However, it did arrive with a little bit of damage on the grip tape on the front of it. Not a massive deal, I'll probably just kind of cut off, sand off the little edge, but you don't have a perfect line of grip tape there anymore. It is definitely marred. It folds up quite small. I have another electric scooter that was about $640, so this is just slightly above that class, and it's bulkier in the tray, and it's a smaller scooter overall, but it doesn't fold up this small. The big advantage is these handlebars folding right there. Pull that out and then the whole thing folds over. 800-watt hub motor. It is a fairly high build quality, just by the initial inspection. We got the aluminum connection there between the deck and the handle. It folds up nice, it's got a nice locking mechanism. Build quality compared to my $639 one is immensely higher. So that's one thing this has going for it off the bat. But we'll pop it up, we'll look through the menus, we'll power it on, we'll take it for a slight spin possibly, but ultimately charge it before we do any real testing. It's got a key switch, which only kills the power to the power button. You still have to power it on by holding the power button down. And then you can cycle through different modes or on the display here with this power button. I burned out a little bit on the grass, so I got 0.2 kilometers. It remains between power off, interestingly, so I'm not sure if that resets ever. Whenever you turn it on, it resets the timer for how long it's been on for. And we'll dig into the settings a little bit more. I want to show you the build quality and some of the things that it takes to put together first. This piece comes loose. There's just a little set screw bolt on the back of there. You screw that in, it tightens it down. You have to pick where you want it. I'm not a big fan of finger throttles like this. I mean, maybe it's because I'm not used to it. I mean, a thumb throttle, I've done quads a lot. You know, twist throttle, motorcycles, those are familiar. This is unfamiliar to me. So a little bit less favorable towards that. I tried to set it up so there's a good space between the throttle and the brake. so I could have, you know, finger on each if I need to, or I don't reach for one and grab this instead of breaking. These little attachment points here are actually pretty cool. It allows it to fold up and then quickly snap in. I will say that sometimes, especially with this one, I had trouble getting it to go in and latch all the way. Gotta wiggle it back and forth a little bit to get it to latch there. It feels good. These are nice rubber grips. They're sturdy. There actually is a lot of meat in there that allows it to feel firm. This is a cool mechanism. It actually has a little latch in here that you can push in with this lever, and it'll latch closed or latch open. And it seems super sturdy. The one thing, there was no instructions on how to set this up. I don't know why there is a cotter pin type of thing here. It's attached with a spring to here, and I assumed it was to hold this in place, but there's a spring that blocks it from going through. So I gotta figure out more about what that is. Some of these wrenches are for tightening down the headlight, which I haven't done yet. If you leave it as it is, it's gonna be real floppy, so you're gonna wanna tighten this down to whatever angle you like it. This mechanism here is interesting. I do think the seat as a whole is a cool design. There's a little lever here that you can, I guess, push up on it, and it allows the seat to fold. So when you lay this down, it's gonna lay flat, and this lays flat on top of it. It clicks in place when you bring it down. Now it's sturdy, and this spring actually has a lot of travel. Let me see if I can show you it compressing. So it's a secondary suspension. There is front shock on this. Back has suspension as well. So it's full suspension with a suspension seat. I would imagine quite a smooth ride. There is no give in those tires though, again. So that's the one thing that will make it feel firmer. Hopefully it's got good grip. They are rubberized, but they're very, very firm rubber. I mean, it's a pretty good looking unit overall. But I think I'll be inclined to take that seat off. I know a couple of guys who would only use it with the seat, so it's nice to have the option. But the whole thing pops off by taking off just this peg, this post, and leaving the mounting point there. I think I'm gonna play with these settings a little bit, get it plugged in. It does show that it's fully charged. If you toggle through, it actually shows voltage. So this is 51 volts as of now. 48 volt battery, lithium ion, should be higher than that. So my guess is that this battery gauge is actually just not calibrated correctly. So you might ride for a long time before it drops, and then all of a sudden it starts going down quickly, and then the battery gets cut off by the BMS or the controller. I will check if the speed matches very well. So this just changes the gears. I'm assuming that 3 is just high speed, 1 is low speed. We'll verify that. It does have signals, which I think is kind of interesting. Real cheesy little horn, pretty typical, kind of fun. Everything on this is aluminum. This tray is aluminum. There's a plastic bumper on each corner. Signals are plastic. This is steel. But everything is well built. The build quality is excellent, I would say, overall. This thing is a little funky. See how it kind of flops around a little bit in there? This piece moves. Obviously, you just got to move that over, and then it won't come down until you line it up just right, because it flops a little bit, like I was saying. But when it's able to slide past, that just folds down. But I'll ride it with it on there just for the test ride. It does not need to kick to start it, at least on the setting that I've got. I appreciate that, because the ones that you need to kick to start, the only reason you've got to do that is because they have no Hall sensors in them. And so the motors actually are lower quality motors. This actually has real Hall sensors. The controller reads the position of the motor, so from a dead standstill it can move. The kick scooters have to be moving in order for them to go. They're not just a built-in safety feature. I appreciate that it's a real Hall sensor motor. So we're gonna go ahead and make sure it's all topped off, take it on a test ride, get a full range out of it. It is a 48 volt, 10 amp hour battery. The range they state is probably overestimated. But we're gonna take it through its paces. You know, what would a daily rider be able to do on it is my question. The sun is rising the next morning. It only took about an hour and a half to charge all the way up. Full voltage is 54.6 volts. During that time, I went ahead and reviewed page 12 and 13, which shows you each of the parameters, and I went through how to set these up. So I'm going to walk you guys through that so that you're aware of what to do. Obviously gear 1, 2, 3 is just speed, 3 is the fastest. You can change that using this button on the bottom. This mode button as well, if you hold it down for just a second, it toggles the underglow lights on and off. The power button does nothing except for turn the scooter on and off unless you hold these two down together, in which case you enter programming mode. The first option is miles versus kilometers. 1 is kilometers, 2 is miles, so it measures both your speed and your distance, either metric or standard. In order to get it to toggle, you just tap this button to make it active, and then you can use these to go down or up. To progress to the next one, you push the power button. The 04 is the delay at shutoff, so right now I have it set at 10 minutes. 9 is 0 start. If you have it on 0, it will go when you pull the trigger regardless of if the motor is spinning or not. On 1, it needs a kickstart. So if you want that feature, you can still program it in. 16 is cruise function. 1 is with the function, 0 is without the function. I'm gonna go ahead and change it so cruise function is active. 99 is reset all. So if you were to, in this setting, if you were to hold the mode button for 5 seconds, it'll reset everything. Now it should toggle back to main screen. You can see it shows miles. There's a list of all the specs, and we're gonna go ahead and jump it on a test ride. All right, the first step is to validate both the speedometer and the odometer. So I'm gonna go take it up and down the street a little bit. Keep this in my pocket. We're gonna find out if it has the right speed and the right distance. Once that's verified, we'll just trust this display from that point onward. On the display here, we got to 24 miles per hour. Obviously, we went 0.4 miles. According to my GPS, the highest we saw was 22 miles per hour, and we only traveled 0.36 miles. So based on that, it's overestimating by 9%. So the miles and miles per hour are consistent with each other, but they're overestimating by about 9%. During that almost half-mile trip, it looks like we lost a significant amount of voltage. Now granted, lithium-ion batteries tend to peak and drop down a little bit, have a fairly linear discharge, and then drop off quickly. So we probably just went down that little drop off, and now it's just a linear discharge portion. We'll take it for a ride, I'll take you guys along, we'll see what the outcome is. Overall ride quality is good. The wheels don't feel as if they're too plasticized. It rides well. Quiet ride, it's fairly smooth. I do feel as though the engine lugs just slightly, and that's probably the result partially of me obviously being a little bit on the heavier end. But the scooter is rated for a much higher weight than I weigh. So the assumption is that it should be able to carry a larger person. I think that it would have difficulty on hills for sure. It does have that cruise control function. You see that little window up here? My finger is off the throttle. It is now maintaining 10 miles per hour as I had held it there for a certain period of time. So that's kind of cool. In order to end that, I would just pull the brake lever. You can see that goes off, and then it starts to coast down. The one thing that I wasn't expecting that I wanted to share with you guys as I ride this, especially seated, standing it wasn't as much, but I can feel a delay or some slop in when I turn the handlebars and it's delivering it down to the wheels. So at a high speed, you almost get the effect of a slight speed wobble. It's very small. It's only perceptible when you're at a higher speed. Right now, I can obviously do it with one hand, no sweat. But at a certain point, that did become something that I felt. I think there's an element of me getting used to that over time. As a whole, it's about what you would expect, I suppose. I mean, it rides well. The motor might be a little bit less powerful than I thought, but not a ton. I mean, it's barely noticeably less than I was expecting. I had hoped to get to 25 miles per hour. I would have been tricked if I didn't know that this was overrated by 9%. The acceleration with my weight wasn't quite what I had hoped it would be. It does get you moving, and so it does the job and it gets you there. The only question that's left really for me is, does it do it for a long period of time? One thing to check in on, it does sag. It'll actually drop down 1 bar, possibly 2, depending on how hard I pull it. You can see that was really just 1 bar drop. As soon as I let go, it goes back, but it's not all the way back to 51.5. It'll rest over time and go back to that. Checking in afterwards, we have gone 2.4 miles. I realized I was on the right track, I just didn't see that there was a hole drilled out of this little push button there. Just swung back by my house and popped that seat off for the rest of the ride. I think it looks pretty cool with the seat pulled off. I will say the display angle on this while you're standing in the sunlight ends up getting a little more difficult to see. That's about where my vision's at as I'm standing on top of the scooter. I may need to angle this down more, but I do like having the separation, so I might just leave it as it is. But one thing to consider, display angle decreases as you go over the top of it. Added a few extra pounds for part of the ride here. We're about to head down the canal trail, see how it does on some of the dirt. It seems that most of the usable voltage is below 52 or so, because we're at 50 almost on the dot. And we've gone an additional 2 miles since we last checked in, so we're at 4.2 miles. Still shows a full battery display, but we functionally can get down to about 43 volts before it's gonna be really dragging. I don't know when it'll cut us off at, but we could probably get another 7 volts out of this pack. And we've realistically only gone down 3 to 4. So it might get us, if I had to guess, 13 miles or so at the current rate that we're going. I will say that the vibration delay is starting to feel a little bit more normal, but it would be something that you would get used to. I have got to pause mid-ride and say that I am enjoying the full suspension. I can hit some of the bumps on this trail that normally would hit pretty hard, it just eats it up. So I've been greatly enjoying the suspension, the full suspension that this thing has.
Yeah, boy. I look pretty good?
Pretty good.
Dang, boy. That's a solid B-roll?
B-roll. Just got it home and parked. It went down to 38 volts. So they made the cutoff voltage quite low on this. But we were able to get 13.5 miles out of it after adjusting for that between 9% inflated top speed and distance. So it ended up being about where I expected it to be. Obviously a little below what they claimed, but we were going probably averaging like 19 to 20 miles an hour, which I guarantee you they weren't rating it at that speed. And I was on it the whole time, either me or me plus a baby. So it did pretty well, all things considered. Quite pleased with it. It got much more stable as I rode it, to the point that when I switched over to my other scooter, which to me was always like much more stable, this one felt wobblier. The handlebars are wider on this one, you can see, compared to those narrower ones. And in spite of the fact that this is not as sturdy of a stem, my opinion now is I prefer riding this newer one compared to the older one, which when I first started it was the opposite. I was like, man, this thing, I wish it felt like this, and now I enjoy the way this one feels more than the way that the old one feels. My initial complaint about it feels kind of like sloshy when you turn, gone. It feels great. I enjoyed riding it tremendously by the end. So there you have it. That is the Evercross H5 electric scooter. There are a lot of pros to the scooter itself. It's got a good build quality. It has a fairly high-powered motor relative to other scooters in that same price range. The battery does do the job, a little bit overrated, but the whole package as far as build quality, performance, customizability, I mean, the display is a really well put together unit that can have a lot of customization that occurs. The seat on, seat off, you know, that kind of a ability to adapt it to your personal needs. I think it's a great choice for the price range, is depending on what range you need and what your body weight is. I would say are the two kind of things to consider. At my weight, it still ended up doing the job for me. It felt about the same acceleration as my other scooter, which I've already mentioned a couple of times. It does have a higher top speed, it has a higher battery life, and it has a higher build quality. The handlebar stiffness or lack thereof was one of the things that I identified, as one of the things that's a drawback. You do get used to it. The big advantage of the way that it's designed is it's very compact and very foldable. It's a heavy, large, robust scooter, but it does a good job at meeting the portability needs. So at that price point, between $700 and $900, I would say it's a good buy. But you have to have that amount of money to spend on something, be looking in that category, in that price range. But whether or not it's the right one for you is something that you've got to determine. But I do enjoy the one that I got, and it's turned out to be quite a fun thing to ride around on and keep around. So we will let you make that determination on your own, but I will catch you guys next time.